Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with reference recording. And today we're talking about Albeniz Iberia. And the reference recording will come as no surprise to any of you who know anything about Albeniz Iberia. Albeniz Iberia. It's Alicia de Larrocha, of course, or Alicia de Larrocha to make my life easier and keep my tongue from wiggling too much. Yes, she was the reigning queen of Iberia and Spanish music generally for most of her life. Really fascinating because there are many fine recordings of Iberia. There really are. And everybody from, Marc-Andre Amelin more recently to Esteban Sanchez and, with the mistuned piano that everyone screams about. It's an iconic work, the iconic work of Spanish, just not Spanish piano music, Spanish music generally. It's like the Ma Vlast, the Smetana, Ma Vlast, my country for the Czechs. Well, that's what Iberia is for Spain. And the fact that it's a solo piano work is remarkable. It has made it available to many more people to perform, idiomatically or not, than we find with Ma Vlast recordings, which tend to be focused on recordings by the Czech Philharmonic. We have this idea that people who are of the ethnicity of the work in question have a certain unique ability to perform the work in question. I think that's complete crap, I have to say, because all of those things, it's all a function. It's not a function of birth. It's not a function of genetics. It's a function of training. It's a function of culture, training, things like that. I mean, anybody who is taught Iberia by people who know the work, who know its insides, its tricks, its things, will be able to do a marvelous job with it. Never mind someone's personal response to the music. I mean, I respond to Spanish music generally. Spanish people might go, ugh, yuck, oh God, he responds to it. But I adore Spanish music, and I adore Iberia. And if I were a concert pianist, I know I could give a slamming performance of it. But be that as it may, Europeans are obsessed with nationalist garbage. And one of the nationalist garbage things European people tend to be obsessed with is the concept that people from the place in question are uniquely suited to playing the music. Now, Alicia de Larrocha, who also played wonderful Mozart, Rachmaninoff, and Beethoven, and many other things, was very smart. She went with the flow. She was able to exploit her ethnicity to have a fabulous career playing fabulous music, because the other wonderful thing about Spanish music generally is that, the Spanish culture was Mediterranean cultures generally, Italy, France, Spain. They didn't have a big orchestral culture. They didn't have, the Central European symphonic ideal in mind. It's not what they were about. What they had was the theater music. They had opera, mostly Italian opera, and then local types such as, zarzuela, zarzuelas, which are just fabulous Spanish theatrical things. And they had the salon culture of Paris, that is wealthy people making music in their homes. In other words, chamber music and piano music. And so there happens to be just a boatload of fantastic Spanish piano music. I mean, keyboard music generally, starting with Scarlatti and Soler and working your way up. And in the Romantic period, particularly when you have romantic nationalist music where you're dealing with folk tunes and things like that. I mean, Spain has one of the richest, most immediately identifiable, most beloved by everybody in Europe. I mean, everybody did a Spanish this and that, Spanish dances and Capriccio Español and, Alborada del Gracioso. I mean, Ravel's Rhapsody Español. I mean, everybody did Iberia by Debussy. Everybody was doing Spain. And they were doing Spanish music, Spanish folk music, Spanish idioms. So by the time we get to the 20th century, you have a pianist like Alicia de Larrocha, who is perfect to do all this Spanish stuff. And that's what she did. And she did it superbly well. There's no question about it. Now, other people, of course, may have other choices for their reference recording of Iberia, but it doesn't make any difference because there's no question that it was her. And she did it 3 times. And what's interesting is she did it 3 times without like sort of in any way losing because of her own, some people shoot themselves in the foot like Karajan did with Beethoven's symphony cycles. I mean, you can do the same thing over and over again to the point where people begin to think that you protest too much or you are competing with yourself, which allows someone who just did it like once spectacularly to take over the reference recording sweepstakes. But she did it 3 times spectacularly. There is only one reference recording, though, and it is this one. This is the Decca analog version. It was recorded, let's see, Albeniz in 1973, or released in 1973, one of the others. It's 1973. This is the one that locked up the Iberia reference recording business. She had done it, let's be clear. After this came out, EMI, which owned Spanish Hispavox, released her first recording. Here it is in a Great Recordings of the Century thing. Actually, it was also there was an Alicia de Larrocha icon box, a box set that had all of her Spanish Hispavox recordings, which had all of the repertoire, most of the repertoire that she later redid for Decca. In sometimes better sound, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Let's see what the date for this sucker was. Oh, my. 1962. Yeah, it looks like 1962. And okay. So this was done in 1962. And most people didn't even know about it because Spanish Hispavox was a local label at that point. And it was only sucked up into EMI later. And then EMI had these and they were able to release them. So there were people who were already saying, well, her earlier one is the best. It's not about what's the best. It's about which one is the most, the most listened to, the most available, the most heavily promoted among all the fine versions she did. Then she also did, because digital recording popped up, this late one. And probably this would have been her favorite. I don't know. But, most artists tend to think their most recent thoughts are the most important. And the other stuff was, well, I felt about it that way then. And here's how I feel about it now. And therefore, this is the one I like the most. I mean, it actually was reissued on DG Originals. Of course, DG Originals really should have been restricted to mono recordings, not DG Originals, Decca Originals, the Originals series, whichever one it is. They really should have, because this one was recorded in 1987. All right. So 1987, that's lovely. And they're all very good. They're all very good. I find Decca's Digital Sonics from 1987 to be, but it's not bad. Not bad. Some people may like it better. But this was the reference. The Decca 1973. Gets so complicated, doesn't it? Really. But when you wanted to hear Iberia, this was the one you got. It's that simple. There weren't that many other competing versions in 1973. There really weren't. I mean, that had the same kind of cachet, the same kind of exposure. And she was also quite smart to do this sort of not at the beginning of her Decca relationship. It was kind of in the middle, I think, or maybe a little bit towards the beginning. But she'd already had a reputation as a tremendous pianist in many other things. And this is coupled, by the way, with Granados Goyescas, which is also fabulous. Another iconic work of piano, Spanish piano stuff. It's coupled this way too here, but not in the digital version. The digital version, you've got, more Albeniz, the Suite Española. So there you go. If you're looking for your reference recording of Iberia, you cannot go wrong with Alicia de Larrocha, with any of them. Absolutely any of them. Now I say this with a little bit of trepidation because the piano crazies, of whom there are a limitless number, which I notice every time I do a video about piano music, come in with, well, there's this one and there's that one and there's this guy and she doesn't know what she's doing and this was this. And I remember back in the days of rec music classical recordings where there was an absolute war, an Iberia war about the Urtext score and the Dover score, what score you're using. It's just all this insanity. that goes on, and people have very, very strong opinions, and they make incredible declarative statements like so and so sucks, and this is great, and then without any evidence to back them up. I mean, I make declarative statements all the time, but I like to think most of the time I back it up with at least some sort of musical something or other, some substance. But no, this was just sniping. Iberia Wars, sniping. No, we don't need to snipe. We are acknowledging the fact that whether you think it's fabulous or not, or whether it was your favorite or not, or whether it's one you imprinted on or not, the 1973 De Larrocha Iberia is the reference recording for Iberia. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, and keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.